Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing in our biodiversity series, and today is a little bit of a sad note. We're going to be talking about how humans are kind of contributing to biodiversity loss. Hello everyone, it's me from the future. I forgot to mention that this video is in collaboration with Susie from Chew on That. So I'm very excited to do a collaboration on this video because there is so much to unpack in this video, and I'm really glad to have varying opinions and views on this topic. So after my video, definitely be sure to check out her video. It will be linked down below and it'll also be linked up here. The focus of her channel is just embracing the good life, and her channel is so much fun. So I encourage you to subscribe to her channel as well. We'll get back to past me. If this is the first video that you're seeing in this series and from my channel, you might want to check out last week's video in this little mini series about biodiversity, in which I talk about what biodiversity exactly is, some factors that are contributing to biodiversity loss, some things we can do to save biodiversity, and other things like that. It really just kind of sets the tone for this overall series, and it might help you understand this video a little bit better. So it might not be necessary, but you definitely want to check it out after this. Today we're going to be covering how humans are contributing to biodiversity loss from overfishing, overfarming, and overexploiting the earth as a whole. So if you're ready for that, let's just jump right in. If you would like to follow along by reading, you can actually follow along using the script linked in the description, link down below, or you can use the gear icon right down here to change the speed of this video to something that best suits you. And if you're new here, I would really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button right down there. I post new content every Monday and Thursday Japan Standard Time, which is Sunday and Wednesday in the US, but I like to focus particularly on practical sustainability, which is a term that I coined here, talking about free, easy, and fun ways that we can make low waste living accessible to almost everyone. So if you're interested in that, definitely hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video, and hit the bell for post notifications. I mentioned this in the last video, but it is definitely worth mentioning again. We exploit the earth way too much. We as Americans, on average, use the average of 5 Earths within a year, meaning that if we all lived like Americans, we would need 5 Earths to sustain ourselves. And last I checked, we only have 1. This means that we are living way beyond our means, and we are exploiting the earth way beyond her capacity. If no changes were to be made in the way that we consume resources, biodiversity degradation would continue until human life could no longer be sustained. And I don't mean this to sound like bleak and scary, but this is just the truth. As our consumption and land use and damage to wildlife continues, biodiversity would continue to go down. So let's talk about just how humans are affecting biodiversity in our everyday lives. So our indirect and direct actions both can affect biodiversity. So if I were to firsthand, me myself, walk into a forest and just dump my garbage there, or to light it on fire, that would be a direct action of me harming biodiversity. But on the other hand, if I were to eat a gigantic, 10-pound steak at every meal, or eat a jar of Nutella every single day, which contains palm oil, that would be an indirect effect. And that is because I'm one step removed or several steps removed from that effect on the environment. Meaning that by me eating that steak, I didn't myself go and cut down a forest for that steak to be produced, but several steps down the line, a forest was cut down for that steak to be on my plate. And if you'd like to learn more about why going vegan is good for the planet, definitely check out last week's video. You know, the palm oil and the factory farming are some of the major causes of deforestation, so they would have negative effects on biodiversity. Other indirect human drivers are demographic, economic, socio-political, scientific, technological, cultural, and religious factors, while direct human drivers are changes in land use, species introduction, external inputs, harvesting, air and water pollutants, and climate change. So, because of human changes to the earth like industrialization, human activity has changed 1/3 to 1/2 of the globe's face, and within the next 50 years, it is expected that humans will have a serious impact on 50 to 90% of the land in developing countries. So, many believe that human population is a big problem, but I'm gonna disagree. Yes, it might play into it, but I think the big issue is overconsumption. I'm gonna just use the argument of the United States, probably the most wasteful country in the world. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, if everyone were to live like an American, we would need 5 Earths to sustain ourselves every single year. But if we take into account India, the #1 most populated country in the entire world, they use less resources than the Earth provides. They only use the amount of resources that 3/4 of an Earth would provide. So that's my argument there. I mean, yes, overpopulation would be an issue if every single person were to keep having 5 or 10 children. Yes, we really would max out Earth's resources without being overconsumers, but we're not there yet. We're not to Earth's full capacity yet, people-wise. So right now, our main issue is overconsumption, not overpopulation, in my opinion. So personally, I think the human population thing is just still allows companies to continue to make more money and continue to sell products, because it's not putting the blame on the companies, just like everything else. It's putting the blame on the consumers. It's putting the blame on us. So the Earth can still support this many people, the 8 billion whatever people we have on the Earth right now, but we're consuming too much, and that's the issue. So yes, I'm pointing the fingers at us a little bit too, but companies also need to take responsibility. They need to not use fossil fuels to produce these goods. I think also better education. To get back to the point, I highly recommend the book, The Story of Stuff. I'm not that far into it right now, but it is really good. I got the recommendation from Shell Bizzle. She's a really great YouTuber here in the zero waste community. I will leave it linked down below, and there's also a short film about it as well. It's only about 10 or 20 minutes, I think. The book is probably pretty big. I have it on my Kindle, so I can't really tell you how thick it is. But anyway, she really breaks down the issues with overconsumption, and it really makes you think about every single purchase you make, even something as simple as a t-shirt. Yes, we need to be responsible for what we purchase, but companies also need to be responsible for what they're making. We all really need to be working on this overconsumption thing together. Farming is another big factor when it comes to biodiversity loss, and that is because of deforestation. 23% of the Earth's land, nearly a quarter, is used for agriculture. And nope, that is not just for the food we eat directly. That is mostly for animal feed. I will insert a great map right here about land use in the United States. Just take a look at the big chunk right there in the middle. I mean, it's not literally, I guess it probably is right there in the middle, because that's where most of our farming is done. Most of the land use in the United States is not for us for living. It's not for us to feed ourselves. It's for us to feed the animals that we then feed. Again, I really highly encourage you to check out my video that I put out last week about why veganism is better for the environment than our traditional standard American diet, where we're eating meat every single meal a day. Internationally, there is half a hectare of tropical forest being cut down to become farmland every single second. By cutting down these precious forests, we remove habitats and increase the risk for species extinction. A lot of these forests are cut down for soy production, but also for cattle, because most of the beef you eat in the US probably doesn't come from the US. And of course, we have to talk about the heating of the climate. We can't leave that out. If you want a full video, in-depth, deep dive about climate versus weather, what's the difference, all that sort of stuff, I'll leave that video linked up here as well as down below for you to check out after this. In short, the rise in climate is due to the increased amount of carbon dioxide, among other gases, in the atmosphere from increased human actions like flying, driving cars, burning fossil fuels in factories, and cutting down forests, among other many things. Climate change affects biodiversity in a number of ways by changing the timing of species reproduction and migration, farming growing season, and the frequency of pest and disease outbreaks, among more things. I will leave some resources down below. It is expected that 80% of biologically rich regions will end up suffering losses of plant and animal life because of climate change, and the rate of habitat loss will actually go up by 10 times. And because of the warming climate, we're seeing rise in ocean temperature levels as well, and I made a video on that too. If you're interested, I'll leave that linked up here as well as down below. And because of the rising ocean temperatures, this leads to coral bleaching, and if you don't know what coral bleaching is, this pretty much means that the algae on the coral is dying, and if you didn't know, coral is actually a living organism. This makes the coral susceptible to disease, and once the coral die, the fish and the other organisms that typically live in those corals no longer want to live there, so they have no habitat either. Once one thing in the chain breaks, the whole chain ends up collapsing eventually. Once the temperature rises, the ocean temperature rises, the corals die, and then the fish have no home. And then there is more. This leads to ocean acidification, which makes the entire ocean a little bit out of whack. Not a little bit, a lot. This turns the entire ecosystem of the ocean out of whack and can affect the entire food chain. The rising temperature of the climate can also lead to more extreme weather events, like I talked about in a video I made in September about the California wildfires. I think I'm out of cards up here, so I'll leave that video linked down below. And it's not just wildfires either. It's even, what was I listening to, a podcast? I think it was a podcast. I think it was an episode of Green Dreamer. Highly recommend Green Dreamer. Climate change can even lead to stronger earthquakes, but among other things, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, so many extreme weather events because of climate change. And we saw a lot of that in 2020. So we're gonna take a bit of a detour, and we're gonna talk about biodiversity loss and environmental racism and how they go hand in hand. I talked about environmental racism back in June, I think. I will leave that video linked down below if you wanna learn more about what environmental racism is. But I wanna touch more on it here because it really does tie into biodiversity loss. Logging has become quite the activity in the quote third world. It has become a common job for the poor. Logging destroys natural habitats, aka the habitats in the land of these people. And for what? Why are we destroying the habitats of these people? And it's for wealthy nations, aka us in the Western world, for us to have things to enjoy for a short period of time and then to probably end up in the landfill. And then we pay for these things that are probably dirt cheap, or we pay a lot of money for them too. We probably can't afford them either. But then the people in these companies, the people running these corporations, are not paying these people a living wage. The current rate of deforestation in Malawi is 2.8%, and roughly 23 species in their forests are endangered. So yes, we will all certainly feel the effects of climate change across the entire globe, like we saw in California, like people saw in Florida this year with the extensive hurricanes. But these people are feeling the effects extensively now. It's also, very sad because people in California got help pretty instantly. People in Florida, here, we had a lot of typhoons this year and we got help instantly. These people are not getting help. They can barely even survive. They're experiencing the floods now and they are getting no help. They are experiencing the fires now and they are getting no help. They themselves are being exploited for their labor in order for us to exploit the earth. Overall, education is extremely important. Actions need to happen. We need to take action and we need to improve these practices. But ultimately, what I think matters the most, maybe not the most, equally. I think they're equally important. Taking action, but educating others. Because the more people that we have educated, the more people that can come over here and help us take action. So you can educate people by sharing this video, talking about these topics with others, starting your own activism by getting on social media, and other things like that. But not just us, but it's also important for the people of countries like Malawi to be aware of different means of finding an income. Because a lot of the times, we think like, but that's the only way they can get a job. They think that too sometimes. This is the only way I can get a job. This is the only way I can make money. That's not always the case. So it's important for everyone all around to be better educated about biodiversity loss, about better job opportunities, about making these companies do the right thing for the people and for the earth. So what can we do to stop biodiversity loss? And I touched a little bit on this in the first video in this mini series, but let's touch on it some more now. One way that we can stop biodiversity loss is to create more diversity. For example, start with your very own lawn. I'm willing to bet that your lawn is regular grass. And this is gonna sound bizarre, absolutely crazy, but quit cutting your lawn. I absolutely would if I didn't live on a military base and it was required. But if you quit cutting your grass, you can let the native species return. The native grasses, the native flowers, and then when you let the native species return, guess what will also return? The native animals. But equally as good, you can start growing your own food. This was an interesting concept I heard in another Green Dreamer episode. How many Green Dreamer episodes can I talk about in this episode of my own? And this episode was in partnership with Acadia Tucker, and they talked about World War II victory gardens. So what this was during World War II, the people actually started planting their own gardens in their yards in order to support the war effort because the country couldn't support enough food for the people in the US, as well as sending enough food to Europe for the soldiers. Not to mention, they needed the factories to make things like tanks and weapons and other things like that. So in order to support the war effort, I think it was even something like 60% of Americans started growing their own food in their front yard. So Acadia brought up this great idea that we need to start an environmental victory garden, or climate victory garden, I think she called it. So in order to help fight climate change, we need to turn our grass lawns, which is a monocrop, into a garden, which can sequester a lot more CO2 from the atmosphere. The ladies discussed how golf courses take up more space in the US than field corn and are technically the #1 monoculture in the US. So another thing you can do to stop biodiversity loss is to quit supporting golf courses. Don't give them your money. Something else that you can do is, if you are a farmer, practice no-till farming. This is a practice I heard about in Kiss the Ground. I talked about Kiss the Ground before, and my friend Susie from Chew on That talked about it too in a really great in-depth video. I'll leave her video linked down below too, as well as Kiss the Ground. But not only this, if you're a farmer, but quit producing monocultures and monocrops. Believe me, it sounded bizarre to me too. I come from a very large farming community, but that was the only way I knew how to farm too. Me and my family were like, nope, you till every spring and every year. Field corn, soybeans, field corn, soybeans. Maybe we'd throw in wheat every now and then, but that was it. So Kiss the Ground really opened my mind to new ways of farming that are better for the earth, as well as you're not supporting factory farming. Double win. The practice of no-till farming actually helps keep the root system and makes the root system deeper. It helps build the topsoil, which helps prevent flooding, as well as helps prevent drought, which means you don't lose as many crops. If you quit producing monocrops, that means you are going to help the biodiversity by making it more diverse. If you plant crops that are known to your region, animals might start to return too, like bees and butterflies. One of the farmers started talking about that too. Like I mentioned earlier too, continued education is huge. It is definitely key. Watch documentaries, read books, listen to podcasts. I love listening to podcasts while I run. It makes me want to run longer. I listen to other YouTube videos while I edit my own YouTube videos and while I cook dinner. Need to read more. I'm really bad about reading. But at least I do those two things, and we love to watch documentaries as well. I just made a great new resource on my website for you guys. It got an entire list of documentaries, books, other resources on all categories across the zero waste spectrum: veganism, minimalism, environmentalism, sustainability, all sorts of stuff. Highly encourage you to check that out if you want a new resource. But anyway, study up on this material for yourself. Really get to know the material you're listening to, you're reading. Don't let it stop with you. Now, you don't have to go out and start a YouTube channel. You don't gotta start an Instagram or anything like that, but have a conversation. Bring it up to your coworkers. Bring it up to your friends and family. Yeah, Mochi agrees. Spread the word about important issues like these because, like I say in all my videos, your small changes have a big impact, but your small changes have an even bigger impact when multiplied. Also, I strongly believe in individual change. I really do. You know, things like planting more trees, planting more native species to your area, and starting these gardens and all the stuff I've already mentioned, but don't stop there either. We need to vote and vote with our dollars. Yes, those are individual actions too. And we need to write to our companies and we need to write to our lawmakers to help us make these decisions too. Again, those are individual actions too. But we need to encourage others to get on board with us and vote too, and vote with our dollars and write to these people because, again, our small changes have a big impact when multiplied. Because, you know, my senator could get one letter from me and he might read it and it might sit in the back of his head and then eventually leave his mind forever. But imagine if this guy got 1,000 letters. He probably wouldn't forget. Basically, we have one Earth and we are using her resources faster than she can create them, and one day she will use them all up. Or rather, we will use them all up. I really like the metaphor I have seen before for a savings account. I think about the Earth as having $365, and we need that to last until the end of the year. Every January 1st, we get a new $365. But we decided to spend all of our money in 2020 by August 22nd on day 234 instead of day 365, meaning we have to go 131 days without any money. What if we had to go 131 days without resources? Clearly we can't, and one day we won't have the choice but to, you know, just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding, but I didn't mean to end this video that way on a sad, dark note. But I just really wanted to put it into perspective for you. Has anyone seen the 100? Let me know if you've seen it down below. Anyway, this show is about how one day in the future, we basically destroy the Earth. So we have to go live in space. And then it's just a constant cycle of us going to space, thinking it's safe, so we come back, and then we destroy the Earth, so we have to try to go live in space again, or in a bunker. And like, can you imagine that being our future? Do you just want to hide out in a bunker, not knowing if it's safe to surface? Or living in space, not knowing if it's safe to return, because there's no other planet that we can go live on. This is it. It just makes me really sad that not everyone cares as much about saving this planet as like you and I. Even some people who probably watch this video probably don't care about saving the planet. Anyway, I just really hope that this video kind of put it into perspective how important biodiversity loss is, as well as how important saving biodiversity is. So don't forget to stay tuned for next week's kind of conclusion to this mini series, in which we'll talk about why biodiversity really is one of the key factors to solving climate change. I mean, among other few key factors. I'm not a climate scientist, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But my personal, unprofessional opinion, biodiversity is one of the key factors. Thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I really appreciate your time and learning more about biodiversity. If you like this video, again, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really does help support my channel and this message. And if you found any value in this video, you think it will provide value to someone else, I would really appreciate it if you share it with others on social media, if you just sent it to them in a text, or if you just talk about it with them over dinner or over coffee or something. If you're new here, again, don't forget to hit subscribe. It would really make my day and really mean a lot to me because I post a lot of educational material here on this channel. I think this stuff is very, very valuable, and I think you'll find a lot of value in it in the future. I try to make zero waste easy, free, and fun for everybody. So if you have any content ideas, definitely let me know what you want to see down below. I'd love to make this channel exactly what you guys want to see. So let me know what you want to see. But that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for coming along with me. I really appreciate your time. And until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye, guys. If this is the first video that you're seeing, you can actually follow along with the script. It will be linked in the bio, meaning that we consume as much as 5 Earth's resources. The resources needed for, I did air quotes, but I probably have B-roll over that. I don't really know where I'm going. And they touched a lot on this. Did I talk about Kiss the Ground? I did. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Fun fact about me, I come from the largest farming family in my county. Sounds so country.